Good evening, everybody, and welcome to tonight's Town Council meeting, July 10th, 2017. Please stand for the Pledge of Allegiance and moment of silence.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you.
Okay, I'm new at this stuff, so you have to bear with me, because Walt's not here. Our first speaker is Cindy, no last name.
Okay, hello everybody. I've spoken to you before. So here, I'm here to talk.
Can I get your last name?
Cindy Davis.
Thank you.
And address.
So,
Cindy, address.
15 Park Lane West.
Thank you.
Sure. Yeah, so on the agenda is the anti-fracking ban for New Milford to approve, and I'm here to speak in favor of it. So, to begin, I know most people oppose anything that's detrimental and damaging to the environment and to New Milford. My reasons for being opposed to having fracked waste materials of any kind, be they water being polluted or drill bits, and I'm learning as I go along too, but it's all hazardous to the well-being of people. So what I'm going to talk about will be the health effects of fracked waste materials. The chemicals from fracked waste cause multiple cancers. It's very carcinogenic, causing multiple organ damages, neurological and developmental problems, birth defects. Now, radium-226 is a radioactive material which has, I don't know if this is a half-life, but it's in the environment. Once it's released, it will stay in the environment for 4,000 years. And this causes breast cancer, bone and liver cancer, adult and childhood leukemia. Now, the reason to have the town pass this ordinance is based upon the fact that the state of Connecticut is not doing enough to protect our environment. New York State passed a fracking ban waste. Maryland passed a fracking waste ban. The Connecticut General Assembly failed 3 times in 5 years to ban all waste. The current law mandates that DEEP submit regulation review from 7/1/17 to 7/1/18. There's a temporary moratorium banning some waste from oil, from wells, and other waste materials, of which I am not an expert. Jen Seskind will be speaking about it because she will explain and answer and provide a lot of insight to what the problem is with fracked waste that I'm sure many of you do not have an understanding. I really appreciate the people that are paying attention to me. I don't think all people are listening as well as I'd like them to. Well, as a teacher, when I talked, I would listen to my students. Therefore, when I speak, I like to know that people are listening to me, and I know they're listening to me when they're looking at me. So that's just the way I deal with people. So I feel it's really important for New Milford to come forward and pass this. There are 20 municipalities in Connecticut that have passed a fracked waste ordinance. The reason why is that New Milford could act to be preventative and proactive and protect the citizens in this town from being affected from the fracked waste. And one more point here, it says that, or I wrote down from this material, that it's important for Connecticut to stop and I'm talking about the state more than the town, that to stop the waste from coming into Connecticut because they have materials that aren't treated, they're disposed of, or they're reused in construction fill or road spreading. So I'm a novice at this, but I know how dangerous it is, and there's going to be other people to speak on it. So thank all of you very much, and thank the people who really showed me the courtesy to look at me. Thank you.
Thank you.
Diane Decker.
Hi, my name is Diane Decker, and I'm the co-president of the Washington Environmental Council in Washington, up the road. I'm here because I want to ensure that the town of New Milford knows that their immediate neighbor, Washington, has examined this issue in 2014. My town's council chose unanimously to ban fracking waste. In fact, Washington is proud to have been the first town of 20 towns in Connecticut to have chose to do this. Other than the 1 or 2 business people who might profit by spreading such poison throughout your town, there is zero benefit. In fact, banning this waste is the only sure way of serving the community you have pledged to protect. Thank you for allowing a non-resident to speak.
Is there a way to take a poll to see if anybody is
205
fracking here, because it's not. This meeting could
Go over 10 minutes.
Meltzer, that's my married name.
Sure. Stuff here.
You want to try reading that name
No,
again?
I tried. I did as best I could. I got
That's
past
okay.
the first part.
That's okay. It was good. Here, I have a handout. Yay! Here you go. And Katie Francis, Master Gardener. Yes. Hello. I'm just going to briefly talk about what's in fracking waste. This is a graph that contains information from the CDC. And this primarily dealt with open pits that they have in Texas, because there's a lot of fracking there. And I'm basically just going to talk about benzene, toluene, xylene, and ethylbenzene. They're aromatic hydrocarbons. I can see everyone's eyes glazing over because, oh God, chemistry. Basically, it's what it sounds like. It's compounds made of carbon and hydrogen put together. And the reason they're called aromatic compounds is because they actually emit a very pleasant, sweet smell. The guy who invented the Bunsen burner, he had a habit of tasting these things, and his tongue turned black. So that's what we're talking about here. They're very toxic, and these components are used as paint thinners, also in thinners of other products, and that's how they wind up in the fracking waste. It's well established that they're high-potency carcinogens, and this, I know it looks like something pulled off the internet, but this is from the CDC. So, science used to matter, and I think it still does. They're especially dangerous because when they rapidly penetrate the subsoil until they hit a barrier such as a water table, and then they become partially water soluble. That means anyone with a well or anyone who's swimming in the lake, that's going to affect you. I mean, there's still mercury in the Housatonic. I cringe to think about it. They're also highly volatile and will contaminate the air when the residents breathe them in and have their health affected. If only a gallon of benzene was spilled into the town public well, I think you'd probably have your children drinking bottled water for years to come. It's not unreasonable to expect that a container system for toxic waste will never leak. You only have to look at many Superfund cleanup sites to see the fallacy in this. It is reasonable to assume that hosting a site would result in illness and death of our town residents over time. If the lives and well-being of our children aren't sufficient to ban any future consideration, then consider what would do to the status of the town and the property values. The town is still recovering from being known as the host to the waste management dump site. I mean, I moved here in 2000, and my boss from Prudential was like, "You're moving where?" And it was big in insurance circles for obvious reasons. Look how long it is taking to clean up Century Brass Mill. If it were ever approved in a bill when little attention was focused on the issue or when monetary incentives were provided, New Milford would be simply known as the garbage capital of Connecticut. Home values would sharply decline just for hosting a site like this and plummet when and not if the site begins to leak. If you read the history of Love Canal, it's just astounding to think that the New York State Board of Regents would approve building a school on top of what Hooker Chemical admitted to being a highly toxic collection. They knew this and they went ahead and did it anyway. So the point is, it could happen here. And from the outside looking in, it seems like it shouldn't, but stranger things have happened and more tragic things have happened. We should preemptively ban this now. New Milford should never be desperate enough to risk our town and its citizens for small financial gain. Now, a woman asked me to read a statement. She has stage 4 lung cancer, so she wasn't here today. It's Lynn Hertel of 14 Sherman Road. And this,
You have 1 minute.
sure.
No, you have 1 minute, right?
Oh, 1 minute? Okay, I'll read real fast. There's no plus side to allowing this to happen, a no-brainer. I have stage 4 lung cancer, so this is personal. There's no doubt in my mind that what we have done to our environment in the past is responsible for more and more cancers. Certainly some of our decisions today were done innocently. The day of innocence is over. We can no longer stick our head in the sand. We know too much now, so there's no longer an excuse. It may be too late for me, but I have a daughter, a son-in-law, and 2 grandchildren who live in New Milford. I do not understand how those who represent us can even consider putting us in danger. Thank you for listening, and please do not let this cancer-causing waste into our town. And her name is Lynn Naclero Hertel of 14 Sherman Road, and she has stage 4 lung cancer. So for her, it's personal. Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
Lynn Martell?
Oh, that's the lady I just wrote the statement.
Oh,
I wasn't sure if I needed to.
she's not here. Okay.
Well, she can't.
Okay, the next one is easy. Ted Hine. I can read that.
Ted Hine, 12 Wellsville Avenue. I'm here to talk in favor of the anti-fracking, really more around making a proactive decision. Let's make a proactive decision rather than a reactive decision that the town normally does. And the lady before me, she mentioned most of the ones that I'm going to reiterate. Let's see how we've done in the past. We have had the brass mill that has been walked away from in the town. We had to deal with brownfield, a toxic waste dump there. The dump, the waste dump where when they were told to stop dumping in it, they just continued dumping in it, and it took a long legal battle where, you could say luckily or unluckily, we got a big settlement out of, but I think it's a poor set of affairs to think that the only reason that we can have a library expansion and a community center, whether you support it or not, is because we had to take a company who was dumping waste in our town. Again, let's be proactive and not reactive. I think we've also received money, possibly for the riverfront, from a company I work for, General Electric, who dumped PCPs into the Housatonic. So do we want to introduce something else into our environment that down the road people are going to have to react to? And I think, the coffers of these companies to be able to say, oh, well, we'll set up a foundation and you'll be okay because you'll get all this money for what cost? Thanks.
Charlie Johnson? Did you say that right?
That's correct.
Charlie Jones, 10 Cooper's Lane, New Milford. I'll spend 30 seconds on a comment about the river trail and then the other stuff. Compliments to the town. It's great. It looks good. It functions good. There's one problem. There is no access between the oil company and the boat ramp, and the barrier is just high enough. I've seen women with strollers, baby carriages, people with dogs, and children trying to get over it in the middle, and it's a long stretch. And I just might suggest that if it's legal, I would make a couple of openings in there somehow so that somebody can get a stroller through. Just Okay, this will take about 2 minutes. I was honored to serve as vice chair on the Land Settlement Committee, which many call the Waste Management Fund, with the great George Doring, without whom the fund would not exist, at least not in the form that it is today. There are others who have received credit for obtaining a settlement, but without George, the fund would not have happened. I served with Mike Moran, Lynn Ermberger, John Spatola, Bill Cornell, and George from late 2000 until 2002. We had many public meetings, and the input was enormous. The overwhelming majority of the public clearly thought that the money should not be used for regular tax abatement, which it was prior to that, and maintenance, but a separate fund to utilize this boon to achieve things that could not be achieved under normal circumstances. We submitted the following recommendations to the Town Council on January 14, 2002, and the Council approved our recommendations with a few minor changes on February 8, 2002. 1. The acquisition of land and other real estate for public recreation purposes. The acquisition of land and other real estate for public education purposes. The acquisition of land and construction of public library facilities. The construction of public recreation and public education facilities. The acquisition of land for open spaces. The buying out of farmers' development rights. And then the additional number 7 was the way the money is spread for the part that goes into the regular budget. We had a concern that in time the public's wishes would be circumvented, but we assumed that the Town Council and the Board of Finance, who we thought would approve all expenditures from the fund, in their wisdom would follow the public's wishes. Repairs and renovations to buildings and property already owned by the town does not fall into any of the categories approved by ordinance, but should be done through regular town budgeting processes. Good projects which would not have been possible have been completed as a result of wise use of the fund. Misuse of the fund could make future exciting projects impossible. We know that the Council has the final word in all expenditures, but we urge the Council to review the ordinance and assure that the public's wishes be fulfilled. Thank you.
Nancy Cheese, 195 Candlewood Mountain. I'd like to share some of my thoughts on the solar farm with you again today, devastating the top of Candlewood Mountain. I think you all know how I feel, but I'm going to say it anyway. At the last EDC meeting, it was mentioned that I was caught with my pants down in regard to the solar plan. I laughed with everyone at the time, but was thinking, as someone who's attended most of the meetings, knowing more than most, there must be so many people out there who are unprepared about what might happen to the mountain. It was funny. I know we all laughed from it. I assume at least all of you, so that you can appreciate what will be lost. Last Sunday, I stopped 13 cars on the mountain. Just stopped them, flagged them down, and asked them what they thought about this solar project going on top of the mountain. 12 of them knew nothing. Nothing. Of the 500 plus people who received a certified letter from Amoresco, how many really knew anything about the assault on the farmland? The letter says nothing about it. It's not clear in this letter about the destruction, the number of acres or panels. If there's no effect, as they claim, I'm not quite sure why so many people received this letter. I'm sure all of you have a copy of the petition that was submitted to the Siting Council, and this is it. It's a book. It should be read and discussed by all of you. The destruction of a mountain and the elimination of huge amounts of farmland and woodland deserves that at least. It deserves more consideration. As you read through it, you'll see that what was presented to you months ago is not what the petition says. Some examples. The noise. The noise went from no noise to no significant noise to New Milford doesn't have a noise ordinance. Three steps down. No noise? Okay. Well, I live 75 yards from where the 76,000 solar panels will be entering, and the steel bars, and I'm not sure if that qualifies for no noise. As a resident, I want to know about that noise. I want to know about the traffic that's going to affect me, my life, my business, and my well-being. I'll go faster. At this meeting, when voting for the pilot, it was said, this is only a vote for the pilot program. It doesn't mean council members support the project. Did all of you know at that time that you weren't going to get another vote? I know you can't answer me. It was said that when they leave in 20 years, the land would be the same as it was before, only without trees. There's a large change now. We went from no one will see the mountain to largely invisible. The petition talks about committees and personnel meetings, a total of 31 meetings, which is fantastic. Just one of them was a public forum. This is why no one knows about it. The paper showed a beautiful picture, and I'll show that to you. Beautiful picture of a split rail fence with solar panels on the inside. There's regulations that say the panels have to be in a chain link fence. They're not new regulations. There's no chain link fence here. I think I may have mentioned to you already, but this pilot proposal was given to EDC also, and all of my to vote on. And from that vote, it was going to the Siting Council. In all of my years on EDC, and we've already discussed this, I don't remember that vote, a vote once. No one seems to listen to EDC, and we talk, we make good comments. The traffic authority doesn't even listen to us. Tom, you and Pete, you've been on committees with me. We've worked and worked and worked and worked. Nothing ever came of those committees. No one listens to EDC. So why were they given the responsibility of this huge okay that then goes to the Siting Council? It doesn't make sense to me. And I'm not trying to put down EDC. I love it. I love all of you. And when it was voted on at EDC, the developers were there. Amoresco was there. And it was really uncomfortable. I mean, it's really uncomfortable with people right there saying, I hate your project, let me tell you about it, let me tell you about this, and what do you think? It's really, really uncomfortable. And I don't think that was a fair vote. Some of the EDC members haven't seen the mountain, and I just am not sure how that commission can take on that responsibility if they haven't seen the mountain. Farmland, I've attended all the farmland meetings. And it's really interesting because their mission is to protect farmland, but the letter they sent said they're not opposed, they're not opposed if the conditions are met according to some of the conditions they did. I will tell you that farmland didn't see that letter and I handed it to them. They are not in favor of the solar project. The letter to the Siting Council from Amoresco reads that it will not have a substantial adverse environmental effect. I guess other than noise, destruction of woodlands, farmlands, and wildlife, which are substantial to me, maybe they're right. If we look at the taxes that are collected, which seems to be the only reason one might want the project, there are property owners in town spending that much money on taxes. A letter was written to the Siting Council from the mayor. It claims that there is a broad support in the town of New Milford. Again, I don't think anyone knows about the project, and I question the use of broad support. I question the transparency of this whole project. Is broad support what was suggested at the only town meeting we had? I'm not sure if this is a personal letter or a town letter, but if it was personal, I would have liked to be able to write a letter. Anyway, thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Carl Donovan.
My name is Carl Dunham. I live on Candlewood Mountain Road. I've spoken to you before, but I want to point out a number of things. There's been a change in legislation, a new legislation that was just passed. I don't know whether the governor signed it or not, but it recognizes a number of things all around the issue of where these things should be sited. They're beginning to recognize that these solar projects, especially solar projects, need to be looked upon as a strategy, much like you do with cell phones. Cell towers where you have certain needs in certain places where they accomplish a lot of needs and they don't have that many adverse effects. The issues, the competing issues of farmland, of conservation, of maintaining wetlands and ecosystems are just being at cross purposes. So there is a new statute that came out, and I believe it's supposed to be effective July 1st, and I think that's what prompted both this project and a similar large project in Simsbury to hurry up and file. I actually think their filing is pretty flawed. And I think if you started looking at it, you'd start realizing it. There are a lot of general statements, conclusions, statements in support that really aren't in support. And all of the conversations and all the studies that you've done, Mr. Mayor, the problem is it seems to be all around you're controlling it. There hasn't been a lot of public input. There's never been a vote, to my knowledge, to support the project. All the argument was about was the concept of whether to consider giving a tax abatement. So I don't agree with all this. And I think it's really, really important. I've written and asked the mayor to be put on the agenda that two things ought to happen. One is the town should become a party to this petition. It is unbelievable to me that you would just take one side's information and not be able to look at it, analyze it, and study it. Just about every proposal that comes into the land use offices typically requires consultants, independent consultants. They're even required that the applicant pay for them. When we went in on this particular piece of property in previous years, I bet maybe $1 million were spent getting all the database together to be considered. And it's just unbelievable to me that you would just allow this to go forward without taking an active position on behalf of the town. So I would like to make that request today, that you consider becoming a party, that you consider hiring independent consultants so they can analyze it. And then also, most importantly, to have public hearings. There's been no formal public hearing on this, and to the mayor's credit, when I brought this up to him on Friday, he's gone ahead and contacted the siting council, and they've set up a public hearing for October 5th. My problem is the information that came from the siting council talks in terms of having to get all your information in by July 31st. It's confusing. I don't understand the process. I've called 3 times and not gotten a response. So I think it's time that we understand exactly what it's all about, what is involved, get people involved so they know it, so that at least you can have an educated understanding and a conclusion as to where you're going to go. So that's my request. I'll make it again today. Thank you. Welcome, Laura.
38 Putnam Road.
Jackie?
That was an interesting thing. Jackie Maroy, 38 Putnam Road.
It's got an S on the end.
Yes, it
So I
does.
pronounced the S.
Oh,
So Sylvie.
I'm just not in the mood to do that today, Frank.
Tomorrow.
I want to talk about the fracking situation, and for me, I mean, I'm not a professional in any of this, and I don't think very many other people are. I would like to know what the hard facts are, how it gets applied, whether or not it's factored in on purchase orders, whether or not there's, with the ordinance in place, can we prevent contaminated soils coming in to use as fill when you're building or whatever. It's a very subtle thing with all private companies, excuse me. So it gets a little blurry for me there. And I have a ton of documentation. I want to just clarify. They have samples for Bristol, Meriden, and Bridgeport, where they failed the DEP stuff. And I was just thinking it's very easy to pick up this material and not know that. If there's some kind of a thing where we guarantee that we say we're not going to accept any of the soil in our town, then at least we have a foot to stand on. I don't know how you solve that, and I'm really not sure what the wording is in the ordinance, but it would be how it was applied that I would be interested in. And I don't think, I mean, when you talk about fracking, nobody wants fracking, but then the waste gets very subtle and how it can contaminate our area. And there are other towns that have paid over $5 million in fines because they had acquired some of this soil, and then the town was responsible to clean it up and take care of it. I think that's pretty much it. the fact that it comes into the air and comes into the soil and the water, and the past experience with the Housatonic, those are things that are sensitive for everyone. But I think it's important to find out how it gets played out. You know, I think that would be important. Thank you for listening.
Thank you.
Diane, when to this 81 West Rutland Road?
Good evening. Thank you very much. I am from out of town, but I do support and represent members from 350 CT and also Connecticut Sierra Club. We do operate.
I missed your name. I'm sorry. Can you say it?
Spell it.
I didn't hear it. Can you just say
Diane Lentakis. Lentakis. We're close.
And your address, please?
81 West Rutland Road in Milford, Connecticut. So again, my name is Diane Lentakis, and I live in Milford, but I do represent members of 350 Connecticut and Connecticut Sierra Club. 20 towns and cities have passed in Connecticut the banned fracking waste ban. I mean, this is pretty incredible, doing it one by one. It's not an easy process, as one can imagine. So keep in mind, 20 towns and cities. Some with elected officials and town commissions leading the effort, others with citizen groups that have petitioned and voted at town meetings. All ordinances have passed with overwhelming support, with only a few voting against. None have failed to date. So I'm going to go through some of the towns just so you get an idea. Washington, in March 15th, 2015, special town meeting called by the Board of Selectmen. Portland, June 1st of 2016, Clean Energy Task Force spearheaded with support from First Selectmen, unanimous Board of Selectmen vote. Andover, October 6th of 2016, petition initiative and special town meeting, unanimous vote, about 443-0. Wyndham, Willimantic, October 18th of 2016, Conservation and Energy Task Force spearheaded. Town Council passed unanimously. Windsor of January 3rd, 2017, Town Council passed unanimously within only 3 weeks, championed by Republican Minority Leader with full bipartisan support. The first night it was on the council agenda, they unanimously voted to set a date for a public hearing as required by their charter. Immediately following the public hearing, 3 weeks later, the council passed unanimously. Pretty incredible. Just going to go over several more here. Huron, April 20th, 2017, Board of Selectmen resisted acting for 1 whole year. The town residents gathered over 900 signatures on an unofficial petition, which was also hosted at the counters of 5 businesses in town. So this included also the businesses came into play. Ace Hardware, Town Coffee Shop, etc. A public hearing was finally called, and the Board of Selectmen passed the ordinance. Let's see. I'm going to go on to a few of the other towns which might interest you as well. Coventry, October 5th, 2015, petition initiative, special town meeting. More than 90 residents turned up to vote. Probably around the same amount of people here tonight. Mansfield, October 26, 2015, petition initiative, town council voted to pass if first instead of going to town vote. Ashford on November 21st of 2016, Conservation Commission spearheaded. Board of Selectmen held a special town meeting. Brantford on December 15th. I know how boring this might sound, but it's very incredible that, again, 20 towns have passed. Okay, Brantford, 12/15/2015, minority Democratic leader was champion, majority leader was opposed, but it passed with Democrats and 11 of a Republican majority voting yes. I am going to skip. Also, 15 county legislators in New York and scores of individual municipalities have passed fracking waste. These have been bipartisan efforts. Over 400 municipalities in New York are now protected by fracking waste bans. You have the opportunity here in New Milford to be the heroes of your community. Protect your property values and infrastructure and prevent potential future costly burdens to your own town budget and taxpayers. I speak for the New Milford members of Connecticut Sierra Club and 350CT that are in support of passing this ordinance and ask to act quickly and show strong leadership for your community. Thank you again for having me.
Matthew Watson.
Good evening. I'm Monty Robeson. Resided at 8 Chidsey Lane for more than 30 years. If the history of our time is ever written, it will be very unkind to the extreme method of producing energy by hydraulic fracturing. Fracking is so damaging to the biosphere that it should be universally outlawed. The fracking process injects a fracking solution under high pressure into deep wells to fracture and dissolve rock, thereby releasing the gas or oil contents of the rock. The fracking solution is mostly water, usually fresh water. There are now over 10,000 active fracking wells in Pennsylvania alone, and each of them averages over 4 million gallons of water use each. To this water is added a witch's brew of chemicals, most of them toxic, and many are carcinogenic. Over 692 chemicals are used in the fracking industry, and over 10% of them are considered industry secrets. Much of the fracking solution is not recovered and remains in the ground where it can migrate and contaminate drinking water supplies. It also, the process triggers earthquakes, which can damage the well casings and release natural gas, which is methane, a strong greenhouse gas. The net effect of this is that burning fracked natural gas to produce electricity likely produces more greenhouse gases than coal-fired plants would. The fracking process also produces huge amounts of waste, both solid and liquid. The fossil fuel industry is finding it very hard to dispose of all this hazardous waste. So they are attempting to find states or towns that are uninformed enough to accept this waste. And they're probably paying these towns to accept it. Their propaganda will probably say that the solid waste makes a perfect fill for brownfield sites, and that their salty process water makes it the perfect road de-icer. What they'll not say is that both the solid and liquid waste contain poisons and radioactive elements. Radioactive uranium and thorium are both found in the Marcellus Shale Formation in the Appalachian Basin fracking area. These elements decay into radium-226 with a half-life of 1,600 years and radium-228 with a half-life of almost 6 years. Radium is soluble in water, so the fracking process water is radioactive. The alpha and beta radiation from this radium decay is problematic if it's ingested by drinking water that's been contaminated, or by eating plants that have absorbed the radium, or by eating animals that have eaten these plants. But the gamma radiation from this radium-tainted frack water is directly dangerous to people. New Milford's state-of-the-art water treatment plant will do nothing for the radium, and little, if anything, to mitigate the toxic and carcinogenic effects of the fracking chemicals. Our neighbors to the north in Washington last year unanimously approved an ordinance that banned fracking waste in their town. And I urge the town council to approve tonight the citizens' initiative ordinance that will ban fracking waste from New Milford. There's no amount of money that would make fracking waste a positive for our town. Thank you.
Thank you.
Helen Appling, 75 Buckingham Road. Did I get close?
Applebound.
It's close.
It's close, it's close. I'm here to talk about the banning of fracking waste, but before I do so, I would just want to say that I didn't know that the solar farm was still up for discussion. I had no idea that it was going forward. And so I support the people who spoke earlier in getting more information out to the public and finding out what we're really talking about here. I'm very much in favor of solar farms, but not by cutting down forests. So I'm here to tell a story, because I don't have any statistics. I don't have a science degree. But I can tell you a story about my own property on 75 Buckingham Road and water. And water is it's either in the basement or it's flowing around my house. And this past spring, I noticed that the wellhead was bubbling. It didn't look right. And so I called in our wonderful plumber, Tom Tomaszak, and lo and behold, we had a problem. And he needed to raise the height of our water, of our pipes coming out of the ground. Because the water table, although we had been in a drought last year, this year we were overwhelmed with water. So I now have a hydrant sitting on my property, and it bubbles, continues to bubble, but now it goes through a faucet, which goes underground into a French drain that runs under my driveway and down through some pipes at the edge of the property. That's number one. Number two, I don't know if you know anything about riparian rights, but there's a stream that runs alongside my property that flows into the West Aspetuck. And in that stream are two huge cement cylinders for water, because that water originally flowed down to feed the house at the bottom of our hill, about a half a mile down. That was owned by, now I'm going to blank on his name, musicologist. His daughter lives on my block. Anyway, his property, he was renting out to a tenant, and she was getting sick. So he had the water tested, and they told him that he should add Clorox to the water. So with our permission, of course, he came on the property, and he and his son-in-law removed the top of the cistern, and they added chlorine or Clorox to the water. That was something that happened maybe 5-7 years ago. But that can happen easily when you have wells that are fed by streams or water tables that run underground and finally get into their well. We didn't drink the water from our well when Tom took it apart. He said, wait until you've had it tested. And so we boiled water and we bought water, and we were lucky that the water on our property is still safe to drink. But I want to make sure that going forward, the water on everyone's property, particularly those of us who still have wells, will have safe drinking water. Thank you.
Good evening. Josephine Gregorio, 18 Cobbler Lane. Everyone said everything I think that I want to say, so I'm just here to support the fracking waste ban. That's that's really all I got. I mean, you know, I think taking a little bit pragmatic approach is probably a good one. We don't frack here. I don't think anyone's really mentioned that. You know, not that I know of, at least. Does anyone frack in New Milford? I don't think so. So why would we want to? Right. I mean, so why would we want to accept those chemicals here? You know, we've seen the effects of chemical dumping time and again. You know, let's learn from the past. That's it. Thank you.
Chris Gardner.
Good evening, Chris Gardner, 19 Sand Road. I'm on the EDC, and I got to admit I was the one who made the pants comment, although I meant no disrespect. I am in favor of the solar project. I think it could put us, if it's done right, I think it could put us on the map. It could be like, you know, when you see somebody driving a Prius or something, you say, oh, wow, that guy really is into the environment or whatever. And I think this, if they say New Milford's, even though we're not going to be using that power, I think they're going to say New Milford, you know, is the solar capital of New England, maybe. So I'm for that one. I also I drilled a well on Buckingham Road one time a while ago, and it did flow over, and I was really excited. You're really lucky, because I've drilled other wells that are dry, and a flowing well is really exciting. Just as a point. I'm here tonight to talk about number 7, which is the schedule of fees. And I've been in the trenches for 30 years in town, building houses. I brought a lot of nice people to this town who maybe not have the opportunity because I built a lot of affordable houses. I didn't get a chance to study the proposed fees because I guess they weren't released to the public. But I'd like to have, before you approve it, I'd like to have a chance to maybe take a look at it. Again, I'm a guy in the trenches maybe, and I could maybe add something to that. One of the things I've always wanted to come here and talk about, and I know I've talked to some of the guys about this, is the building permit fee itself. Now I know like subdivision stuff might be a little low, some of the other stuff might be a little, but like the last colonial house I built in New Milford, and this shocks everybody when I tell them, the building permit was like $4,200. Just the building permit itself for the house itself. And I believe that Frank and I had this conversation once, that the cost of a fee should cover the expense to maintain the fee. But if you take, and this is no disrespect to the guys in the building department at all, but if you take, say, a building permit on a colonial house, maybe 2,000 square feet, maybe 2,500 square feet, say you have $500 in the office for a secretary and studying the plans, and maybe 10 inspections is kind of normal. At $100 inspection, that's $1,500. And say maybe $500 for screw-ups, that's $2,000. But the permit, and this was in 2009 or 10 or 11, the last time I built a colonial, the permit to build that house was $4,000. Now, here's a couple of ideas I have. I think somebody told me once there's 900 approved building lots in town. We're never going to see, again, the division of land with big colonials on it. That will never happen again. Young people don't want to cut the grass. They don't want to cool a 4,000 square foot house. They don't want to heat it. That will never happen in this town again. You can't build a house and sell it and make any money. It's pretty much a loser. But in smaller houses, it might happen. So what's happening now is, and I'm seeing this, I go to all the tax sales. And what that is, you know, when the town doesn't collect the taxes, they sell your lot at a tax sale. I've been the last 3 or 4 of them. And slowly but surely, the lots are starting to appear. And what's going to happen is people are going to give up. Like, for instance, I bought your father's lot, and I still have that lot, and I can't build a house on it and make any money, and I can't sell it. So what's going to happen is one day I'm just going to say, you know what, I don't want it anymore. I can't pay the taxes on it, and I'm just going to give it back. And that's going to start coming back to us. And this is just a little thing, like, for instance, you take Century Brass. If we had to go back 15 years, would we have taken that property back? No. And I think, like, for instance, the last tax sale, I bought a lot because it was next to a property I own. There was another little lot that in a really nice location next to the silo. And we had it assessed for $50,000 or $60,000 or $70,000. It sold for $18,000. And I didn't even want it. And the guy who bought it come up to me all worried, and he said, hey, why didn't you buy that lot? I said, what are you going to do with it? You can't build a house on it anymore. So what are you going to do with it? So, you know, a house, a condo, an apartment, they'll throw income. A commercial building, they'll throw income. A building lot will not throw income. We're going to see a trend if we don't try to do a little something, and when I say a little, I mean, reduce the price of a building permit. So maybe we can get some young couples to build a house on these, and I'm talking, you call these dog and cat lots, for a lack of a better term. Not a new subdivision, but a little lot in town where maybe a young couple can come in town and build a little house. So I'd like to take a look, please, at this fee revision schedule, and maybe I could add something to it. Like I said, I've been in the trenches a long time, and I do have a lot of ideas. So thank you.
Very good. That concludes public comments. Let's see, what are we up to? Item 3, approval of prior minutes. Entertain a motion.
Motion to amend the 6/26/17 minutes to include the meeting was called to order at 7 p.m. by Mayor Gronbeck, and to correct the term dates for Palmyra Levasseur as a municipal agent for the elderly from 6/26/17 to 11/30/2021 to 6/26/17 to 6/25/2021 to reflect the 3-year term.
Second that.
Okay. Yeah, those were just 2 additions that were left out. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Can we just get into the clerk? 2 abstentions. Thank you. Mayor comments. I'll try to be brief. I do have some positive things, but I do want to address the public comment regarding the solar panels fairly quickly. Yes, I agree. The town is already in the process of becoming a party to the siting council. As I said, I would originally, because we have a duty not only to be present, but also to ensure that the conditions that were negotiated as an addendum to the pilot agreement are enforced. Now, a reference was made to a letter that I wrote. I did not say that there was broad support in the community for this project. Specifically, what I said is there is broad support in the town of New Milford for renewable energy projects, and this will be the first of its kind in the town. While there has been some concern about the environmental impact of the project, the town sought to mitigate any potential negative impacts with conditions attached to our pilot agreement. And then I set forth below all the conditions, including 2 pages of single type, a road and infrastructure surety bond in the amount of $125,000, sedimentation and erosion control bond for $100,000, landscaping surety performance bond in the amount of $100,000, efforts to hire local contractors, a development and management plan submitted to the town for approval, a decommissioning plan, a decommissioning surety performance bond, a stormwater management plan that would be approved by the town, shade-tolerant pasture grasses, siting council approval, and so on and so forth. And the important part of what I said is at the end. And I said, I support Amoresco's application regarding the project conditioned on the continued compliance with these and any other necessary conditions that are imposed. And so we're going to vigorously ensure that the town's interests are enforced. But I also want to point out another thing we included. Excuse me. Excuse me. This is not public comment anymore, and you don't get to interrupt. Same way I didn't interrupt anybody during their public comment. So one of the important things that were in the agreement also was the zoning. So I know that Mr. Dunham fought very hard to have condominiums allowed to be put in zoning on this property. And one of the things that we put in this agreement with the property owner was that they would not oppose alleviating that condominium zoning and actually going back to the more restrictive residential zoning in case that this solar project didn't go forward. I think that's very important because Mr. Dunham either gets up here and complains about cutting down trees. The important thing that he's looking to do is scoop up this project again and build condominiums up there. That would, again, cut down trees, reduce and impact the entire community. And the community is against condominium being built on that project. So we're going to move forward with zoning as well to have that zoning designation removed in conjunction with the property owner to ensure that even if this property the solar project doesn't go forward, that it will not revert back to condominiums on the top of the mountain. And I think that's fair. You could ask me a question after. I'm sorry, what? Yeah.
The letter, I haven't seen the letter that you wrote.
Sure.
I'm just curious, who
write it to
The Siting Council had asked for.
Okay, and I realize you just read, verbatim, that you didn't say, well, you read your words.
Sure.
I'm just curious why you felt the need to endorse it on any level. When we voted strictly, and many people around this table said they approved the pilot project, but were not really in favor of the place that this was happening because of what it was going to do to the land. So what moved you to feel that you should endorse it at all?
It wasn't an endorsement. I thought it was important that the Siting Council
you made a statement
understands.
that the town was in favor.
I did
Last
not
I
make that
checked,
statement.
We haven't had a town meeting so that you could really know that the majority of people in this town are in favor of, what do you call it, solar or
Ms.
whatever
Francis,
type of energy.
I
But
did
you
not
don't
say
know
that the town.
Just read it, what you said at the beginning.
I'll say exactly what I said. I said, which was a result of many months, there's broad support in the town of New Milford for renewable energy projects.
You don't know that.
For renewable energy
Since you've
projects.
been mayor, and since you've lived here, we've not had any public hearing or voting to show that.
Ms. Francis,
So
we'll put
that's
this
all
on
I got to
we'll put this
say.
on the agenda at the next town council meeting, and you can debate it.
I still will
That's
say,
fine.
I don't think it was within your right to represent any part of this town by sending that letter, which is in many ways an endorsement. When you
It's
heard
not.
everybody at the table say we weren't endorsing it.
Yeah, I
But
made
you
very
did it
clear.
anyway.
Well, you could disagree
Well,
with it. Send your
well,
own letter
okay.
that says that you were against it.
Yeah.
In any
yes, I will.
event,
Yes, I will.
that's where I stand. Now, getting on to other matters, there is the Richmond Center groundbreaking on July 21st at 2 o'clock, and I would invite everybody to attend. It's a project that's been a long time in the making, and we're very excited to finally start construction on it. In addition, the Vietnam Veterans Memorial will be dedicated this weekend, Saturday, July 15th at 10 a.m. And again, it's a great project that I would encourage everybody to attend and show our support for our Vietnam veterans. Okay. I would entertain, there's a large crowd here tonight. I think there's been precedent for it to move up the agenda item regarding the citizen petition for the fracking ordinance. I'll entertain a motion.
Can you, whoever moved it, would you please?
Or just so,
say
we'll move
what
it up.
is the,
Yeah, I would like a friendly amendment to move 12B up to just prior to number 5, appointments to boards and commissions.
And I would second Mr. Esposito's motion.
Fair enough. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Okay. So we'll entertain a motion, because it is discussion and action, and then we'll discuss it from there.
Okay, motion to set a date for the public hearing for a no?
No, where's the D?
No, this is just
doing 12B.
Item B.
Oh, right. So we discussed this, that we were going to set a
No,
public
no.
hearing?
No.
Oh, you
Let's
just want a
let's
motion?
just discuss it. Discussion and action.
Okay. So what do you want?
Do we have a copy of the petition?
Yeah, it's 12B. So here's the the discussion and possible action regarding citizen petition for a town ordinance pursuant to Charter Section 408 to ban fracking waste disposal in the town of New Milford.
I will second that.
Okay.
Loudly.
Well, may I make a little more structured motion? I would propose, by way of friendly amendment, since you said it was a motion, I would move that we consider the creation of a government citizen panel for the investigation of, discussion of, and the presentation of an anti-fracking amendment that New Milford could adopt.
Can I just make a suggestion first? I mean, let's have a motion discussion before we and then let's see if we could discuss a committee, we could discuss a vote tonight, or we could discuss a public hearing or something in between. Does that make sense, Mr. Szymanski?
I do not support Scott's friendly amendment. We heard from like 20 people tonight. I participate in the town of Washington often, and I think this should go forward. I think this is one of the only things that we don't need a committee for.
hold up for a second. Ladies and gentlemen, I do appreciate your enthusiasm. I've seen it on both ends of the aisle. It's positive. There's been negativity. But everybody's got to treat this the same. In order for this body to deliberate, they've got to be able to do it without interruptions and things like that. So please we understand. I think we're going to get to the right place. But let us get there, okay? Mr. Wargo.
Hold on, is there an actual motion on the table?
No, let's break this down procedurally. Let's start with item B. Make the motion for discussion and possible action regarding citizen petition for a town ordinance pursuant to Charter Section 408 to ban fracking waste disposal in the town of New Milford. Will you do a so moved, Mr. Esposito?
Second.
No, it needs to be so moved first because I can't
So
make
moved.
a motion. Okay, well, somebody else second it.
As a parliamentary matter, I believe the outstanding motion has to be taken off the floor and a new one made, because there is actually a motion on the floor. There was a request to amend the existing motion. So if Mr. Esposito would withdraw his prior motion, then I see no procedural problem to proceeding.
So wait, which one are we working on? The first one that sounded, or the second one that sounded the same? I think they're the exact same. So I think either we use the first one or the second one.
The first one.
I agree with you. We got to take one.
Would you withdraw your friendly amendment?
Yes,
request?
I would.
Okay, so then the first one carries. Mr. Esposito made the motion. Ms. Francis seconded it. Now it's open for discussion. Okay, Mr. Ward.
All right, I'm not an expert on this. I didn't hear anything good coming from fracking materials being placed in New Milford. But it seems to me that if people make money fracking on their property, they have the responsibility of the downside. You make money by pulling minerals out of the ground, but you put other things in the ground, you're responsible for that. So my feeling is, if you put it in the ground in one place, then it should stay in that place or in the local area. You can't transport it halfway around the country and let somebody else take the responsibility. So just from that alone, I'm against it. And the other thing is, who makes money on the fracking material that could potentially be placed in Milford? The property owners? So if I own 10 acres and say, sure, bring it in, how much are you going to give me? I'm going to give you $50,000, whatever. Then who's responsible for any of those chemicals that get off my property and get on other people's property? I think it's just a can of worms that we definitely don't want to deal with. If we cause the problem, we should solve the problem. We're not causing this fracking problem. Somebody else is. I'll let them deal with it. I think the fracking material does not belong in the Milford. And you're right, I don't think we need a committee for this.
Okay. Mr. Esposito.
Thank you. I want to thank everybody that put this together. You could have knocked me over with a feather that we had a fracking issue in the town of New Milford, or that we were going to be buying or trucking in radioactive fracking material to fill in. When we have three mines here, we have enough sand, gravel, and bank run to fill in the entire Housatonic River from Massachusetts to Long Island Sound. So the thought of it was completely out of my mind, and I appreciate you bringing it up. On a daily basis, I'm trying to get people to stop burning fossil fuels in their homes or in their buildings. So I am all in favor of this. Natural gas is a joke. It is a pathway to nowhere. Anybody who believes that natural gas is our future is fooling themselves. Okay, so I agree with 100%, but I'm like I said, you could have knocked me over with a feather that this was on the agenda, that we had people fracking for gas in the town of New Milford, which I do not think there's a natural gas well. I'm shocked to think that anybody would purchase materials or be duped. So I am 1,000% in favor of this. I agree with my colleagues here. There's no need for any sort of committee here. This just can't happen in the town of New Milford. And I thank you all for your hard work. And I apologize if I wasn't paying attention a little bit, but I was. I can listen and read at the same time. I was a very good student. I didn't have to look at my teachers. And I know Mr. Szymanski was as well. But we listen to everybody. Don't think anybody up here doesn't if we're not looking at you. So I just wanted, in defense of my colleagues who are at the table, we listen to everything, believe me. Thank you all. Thank you.
Mr. Chamberlain.
Thank you. As someone who travels through New York and into Pennsylvania on a regular basis, I was surprised several years ago when I saw the massive drilling and fracking activity that's going on, the opposition there too. You can't travel the road to Pittsburgh without being stuck on the 4-lane down there, without giant trucks of chemicals, giant tank waste trucks going both directions. And clearly, it's been a bad deal for the people of the state of Pennsylvania. It's been a bad deal for the people of the state of New York where it's occurred. And I'm absolutely prepared to support a motion. Now, whether in fact, how we enforce it or how we make it more than a symbolic gesture, I think is a very real question. Because, you know, this stuff doesn't come with a flag on it. It doesn't come with a bill of lading. It's not like a clam where they, tell you where it was raised. So I think enforcement is a question. Do I support that we not have post-industrial waste spread on our roads, used as infill or whatever? Absolutely. Am I going to vote for that? Absolutely. Do I think that we have some challenges that lay ahead in terms of how we implement? Absolutely. And I was absolutely shocked and pleased to hear that Mr. Zemansky is now an environmentalist.
Miss Lundgren.
I can't imagine any geographic area in the town of Milford where people would be in favor of having this waste deposited, not by Candlewood Lake, Candlewood Mountain, Mariel section of town, around our schools. I don't think there's anybody in this town that's going to say, I want the waste on my property. I think this is a no-brainer, basically, and we all need to go along with all the other towns in the state that are banning it, and I see no problem with supporting this.
Let me say 2 words, though. So we're not accepting, I want everybody to know, we're not accepting any kind of fracking waste as it is, and I don't see, that wouldn't, from a practical point of view, it wouldn't go to our sewer plant wouldn't accept it either. Nobody would be allowed to store this, but that being said, then why not have an ordinance to make sure that that doesn't happen either? The concern that I kind of had reading this was, and I just learned about this recently, is that this waste is being recycled into products that, like Scott had said, we don't know about. And that's very concerning, that it could wind up in asphalt or road brine, salt material or anything like that. So I think, and I've already started thinking about this, having some kind of certification from any contractor that we do business with that says that, none of the material that they're applying in the town has fracking waste in it would help with some of the practicalities and would dovetail nicely with this ordinance. I was going to ask Attorney Tower, though, from a procedural point of view, the charter reads a little bit contradictory because under this provision, which was it, 408B, it says we have a petition, it's brought to the town council, and then if we don't vote on it, then it goes to a special town meeting within, after 60 days. But if we do vote on it and vote to pass the ordinance, does it then also have to go to a town meeting, or is this basically the special town meeting?
I think you may be concerned about how 406 works.
Right.
But 406 is your standard, the way that the town council passes an ordinance, and it requires a public hearing on that ordinance before it's passed and acted on by the town council. In the 408 context, you don't need a formal public hearing as you do in the 406 context. What you do need, though, is a determination by your town attorneys that any proposed ordinance through 408 has been determined by us to be consistent with existing law. And we have issues relating to the Interstate Commerce Clause, as well as due process, as well as how this exact draft fits within our existing ordinances that we need to clear. I'm not saying that we oppose it. I'm not saying we would take any position other than wanting to make the determination under 408 that it's consistent with existing law.
Okay, fair enough.
I think you need that before you vote as a body to adopt this ordinance.
Or you could do a conditional vote. I mean, you could vote subject to, council's, recommendations regarding consistency, so that we don't have to, bring everybody back or anything like that. Yes, Ms. Francis.
So, obviously, people do get duped every day. This town's been duped, and I do definitely want to make sure we don't accept it. So your point of having some sort of rule, regulation that we vet anybody who brings any sort of material which is going to be, that's what we're talking about.
Basically, a certification that they have to sign off on, yeah.
Right, with some sort of ramifications, fines, if it's found that.
Sure.
Because as Scott said, there's no red flag letting you know that this is coming. And there's been a lot of things in history of time that have been that way. So if we need to wait for, as Attorney Tower said, to wait for this to be put together, what would we be voting on now?
Well, this is what's before us, this citizen petition and this proposed ordinance. And you could vote on the ordinance as proposed, subject to the attorney's recommendation regarding consistency.
The other option you have is to table this pending our determination on referral.
Or you could table it pending their determination as well.
Scott, what would be more effective, I mean, John, what would be more effective for this body? To table it and just come back at the next meeting? Because I mean, obviously everybody agrees with this, and we're not gonna let anything in town, so that everybody knows, you know, in the next 2 weeks, we're not getting fracking chemical trucks here. What's your recommendation?
The town, we owe an obligation to the town to protect the town and to ensure an ordinance is legally enforceable and fits within our existing ordinances. Based on my conversation with Randy Devello this afternoon, I think his preference would be to see you table this, let us do the determination of 408 and revisit the next town council meeting. That's our recommendation.
I'm comfortable with that.
Mr. Morgan?
Yeah, following along with Mr. Chamberlain, I think the specifications when we go out to bid for salt-added products for the roads have that disclaimer in it. I think that's very important, but I think Ms. Francis brought up another point, that if somebody is caught not following our ordinance or bringing material in, we should establish fines that make it so punitive that it's not worth the risk. So it's one thing to say there's a $50 fine for bringing it in, and you bring in 50 tons, and I made $5,000 and I'm fined $50.
Sure.
Yeah,
So it's got to be, the fine has got to be commensurate to what was brought in.
This doesn't have a fine provision of $250 per violation. With each day, any violation shall continue constituting a separate offense.
My suggestion is that the town attorney look into that and what would be an appropriate fine for the condition of the offense.
Sure.
I mean, if it's 50 tons and we find out about it and you're going to fine them $250?
Yeah, no, I agree with
And
you.
what if it's put down on a
That
road?
would make it
If
massive.
it was put on a road, then who's, you know, there's a lot of more deeper things. literally.
Sure, that's in addition to any other penalties that, you know, would be available as well. So I mean, if this is a toxic substance, this statute wouldn't be the only one that the town would pursue. But no, the point is there, and yeah, it's fair. But we do need to know. I mean, you also, I don't know what kind of fine you need, $5,000, you know, a day or a violation. So I get the sense.
5,000 a day until the materials are removed.
I'm just throwing that number out there.
I mean, I'm just saying something so punitive like that.
But
I don't know how much money
if
they
you
get
knew,
from it.
right, if you knew back when the brass mill started up and fell apart and nobody wanted it, what we know today about what it cost, would you have accepted $5,000?
Let me tell you what happened. When the brass mill was built in 1955 to 57, at that time, all of the sewage in New Milford Green was going directly into the river.
Yes.
So it was a lot different environment.
But my point is that we know that something that we make a decision on today could in 50 years affect your children, grandchildren.
Sure.
So I think we should not back away from being forceful with the amount. It's like erosion barriers. It's a joke. People walk away. We don't want to make it that to find out.
50 grand a day.
And don't forget also, you know, most of this, I think this relates to municipal work, so there's going to be contractual penalties as well. So if it's $1 million job and they violated it, you know, we'll have contractual language in there that allows us to go after them. Mr. Chamberlain, and then Ms. Lambert.
As a practical matter, as this town well knows from its experience with waste management, the ultimate answer in most cases of this magnitude is not fines or fees or civil penalties, but rather the civil lawsuits and litigation that has people undo and pay the actual cost of undoing what they have done. So in response to Mr. Wargo's comments, I would say that to some degree, having a civil fine is somewhat of an academic exercise, because any kind of an environmental event would be so far beyond the range of anything we could do by way of a civil fine as to pale in comparison. And regarding Ms. Francis' comment, yes, there is a very real problem with the adequacy of, corporate responsibility for what they do. But there is a problem with them paying fines and hiding behind a corporate veil. There's also the same problem as we saw with Century and with some other, entities, Raymark and Bridgeport, Stratford. That can be done civilly as well. So I think that there are civil remedies in place. The problem is always that these type of civil remedies are not fast, and they're not easy, and they're not cheap to pursue. But ultimately, I think as New Milford has found, once you do ride out the civil justice system, you get a pretty good result.
Ms. Lund.
I'd like to look at the other towns that passed the ordinance and see if they put in any, language about fining companies that violate, the ban. So I think that would be worthwhile, and also possibly looking into CCM to see if they have any support or information that they could help us with this too.
Fair enough, and I'd be remiss, we do have somebody waiting in the wings, but I think your presentation is moot because you've got everybody on your side. You still want to, okay, would you, I'm sorry, I forgot your name. Would you, if you'd like to present it, you're here. I appreciate you being here.
Thank you very much. My name is Jennifer Siskins. I'm a local coordinator with Food and Water Watch, and I've already helped advise numerous towns who have already passed this ordinance. We know that this ordinance is legally viable for you to pass. 19 attorneys from other towns have already reviewed it and given it its okay. There is no concern with transportation and violating interstate commerce clauses because there is nothing in this ordinance that violates transportation. It violates how you're handling, storing, treating, transferring, applying, but there is no wording whatsoever in it about transportation. You have the authority through Connecticut General Statute 7-148 to ban waste to protect public health and safety. There's already a precedent case that has gone before the state Supreme Court that says towns have the authority to move beyond what the state is regulating and to enact a ban if they are also acting in public safety, which the state has already taken into consideration. The current law that we have in the state of Connecticut is a temporary moratorium that has a lot of loopholes. People aren't aware of that. So it is quite possible that you could be receiving, I haven't seen any of your permits that deliver to your publicly owned treatment works, but there is no current restriction on waste outside of the hydraulic fracturing process. And when you're drilling a well, there's a drilling process, there's a hydraulic fracturing process, there's a gas flow process, there's a storage process in a very large industrial scale in underground and also with liquefied petroleum gas or liquefied natural gas. And there are fallout wastes from all of these processes. And right now the state only has a temporary moratorium on the waste that comes from gas wells only from the hydraulic fracturing process or anything that's produced secondary to that hydraulic fracturing process. So there are loopholes for drilling waste to come into the state right now because that happens before the hydraulic fracturing process. It's questionable whether the brine that gets released during the gas flow process is banned as secondary to the hydraulic fracturing process. We don't know. But storage of large-scale gas has nothing to do with the hydraulic fracturing process, and there is brine that falls out during that storage. So your POTW receives non-domestic transported waste. There are 12 facilities in Connecticut that have the same permits as your POTW. New London and Wyndham are two towns that have these same permits, and they have already banned this waste using almost verbatim the language that was turned into you by the citizens of New Milford. And it's my understanding from your town charter that when a legal petition is turned in, as long as nothing is found illegal by your attorney in that petition, that it must be passed verbatim within 60 days. And if you fail to do that, then citizens can come to a special town meeting and vote. And I can tell you, I've been almost to every town meeting in Connecticut, and hundreds of people turn out in support of this. And we've had several examples where town councils and board of selectmen have taken the initiative to pass it before it gets to that stage. You were talking about how much can we fine. Unfortunately, Connecticut state statute limits ordinance fines to a maximum of $250. So that is why that paltry sum exists there. However, state statutes for illegal dumping allow towns to fine $10,000 and confiscate a vehicle. And the state DEP can fine somebody $100,000. But as one of your council members mentioned, it's a paltry sum based on what remediation costs are going to be. As an example, the town of Greenwich has already spent $5.6 million to remediate the contaminated fill that was brought in to build their playing fields around their high school. Their kids have been playing on those fields for almost 2 decades before the contamination was discovered. It's contaminated with arsenic and PCBs and pesticides. It's possible that some of the contamination came from other fossil fuel waste, possibly from the Cos-Cob coal plant and ash from that. Any waste from fossil fuels is going to cause extreme contamination, and radioactive material is just one of the naturally occurring contaminants in this waste. Arsenic is also included, and the chemicals. I think your attorney will find that everything is legal to pass this through. If you have any questions otherwise, I'd be happy to answer them. As far as the enforcement is concerned, there have been 400 municipalities that have already been covered either by their own passage or by 15 county legislatures in New York who have passed fracking waste bans. None of them have belabored about the enforcement, and only one town in Connecticut has belabored about that, and I believe only one town has passed an enforcement clause. I believe that enforcement clause might have been included by the citizens who turned in language to you. If not, I can provide that information. It basically says that the mayor would have the authority to ask somebody to issue a citation, which would be $250, and the mayor would have the authority to call for any suspected contamination to be tested, and that no town attorney or no town employee would have to physically test that themselves. Instead, you would follow the procedures that you already follow, contact DEEP or a third-party facility capable to handle hazardous waste. And the problem that exists with your POTW is that you're accepting non-domestic transported waste that's already been pre-treated. It's supposed to have been treated to a state that it will no longer be toxic when it flows through your system and into the Housatonic River. But unfortunately, what we're finding with fracking waste, where it's being treated at facilities, is that not all of the radioactive material is being removed. You're getting high levels of bromides and iodides in the river. Bromides can react with chlorine when you try to disinfect drinking water and produce a synergistic reaction of brominated trihalomethanes, which are highly carcinogenic. So, for all these reasons, and I do have slides if you're interested in seeing any of them very quickly, but I was asked to only give 10 minutes in talking tonight, so I do want to keep it short.
Yeah, Mr. Esposito.
So where are you seeing it across the state? You're talking about the brine, the roads, you're talking about fill.
In other states, New York, for example, has permitted the brine from conventional wells to be spread on roads. That's being done in western New York in counties and towns that are extremely poor. But appropriate brine that is salt products can be easily mined in surface salt wells in New York State. That's where most of our salt currently comes from, out of New York State for the New England states. So, you know, trying to think that this is a golden goose, that all these materials will be provided for you cheaply as an alternative to your town expenses it's a pipe dream.
So we're talking about salt?
Salt on roads. Contractors are being given permits in other states to mix the solid waste in with fill that's used for construction projects.
Well, and just to stop you there for a second, we have enough mines in this town, like I said, to fill up the Housatonic.
Right.
So my fear is not as much somebody bringing in fill like to Greenwich, which doesn't have a mine. So the things that are going to affect us, the next one, somebody had mentioned something going into asphalt.
Right.
So expand on that a little
in
bit.
some states, and again, it's very few, the solid waste is being mixed with a very weak asphalt material that is spread as capping material on brownfields. Some states are approving that. I don't know if the regulations from DEEP will approve that, but it's one of the things I'm very concerned about, because the state of Connecticut is trying to go into this huge economic development plan by remediating all our brownfields and then increasing our construction and development and helping our economy that way. So, but currently the moratorium only deals with waste from the hydraulic fracturing process and anything produced secondarily to that process. Drill cuttings, which is the solid waste, are mentioned in that, but the drilling procedure happens before the hydraulic fracturing process. So we currently have no clear laws that say you can't bring any of this solid waste into the state if it comes from outside the hydraulic fracturing process. So while you may have a lot of materials available here in New Milford, you don't have control over all your contractors that they're going to source their materials from that location, from your location here in town. So,
well, it would be extremely expensive to ship radioactive material from Pennsylvania all the way to Connecticut when you can go up the road, is my point.
Yeah.
So what I'm driving at is, what are we going to be affected? I'm not talking about Western Connecticut or the rest of Connecticut or Western New York. In the town of New Milford, so that we can alleviate some fears here, we're talking about making sure DPW doesn't buy salt that is contaminated with any of this stuff.
Yep.
Nobody's bringing any fill, which I think is highly unlikely.
Right.
Making sure that the asphalt that we buy, which most of it comes from our local plant with our local materials, doesn't have any of this stuff in it. Where else? Where's the needle in the haystack that comes in that we haven't seen? Because I've heard a lot of this, but I think that it can be mitigated. Where is the ghost under the bed?
the problem is understanding how much waste is being produced and how much of it is being trucked around. Pennsylvania alone, in a single year, has produced 1.9 billion gallons of liquid waste. In a single year, they've produced hundreds of thousands of tons of solid waste. There are these pop-up industries that have developed in Pennsylvania to take the solid waste and try to remediate it and turn it into a viable construction fill or brownfield product or road-based material. You don't know where the state is going to be sourcing their items, so if they're building a state road, you won't have control over where they're bringing their stuff in. But, public health advocates and environmental advocates pleaded with regulators and officials in Pennsylvania, do not approve sending this solid waste in as a construction material. They were ignored. For 5 years, the state of Pennsylvania allowed this waste to be used as fill for underneath roads. And just last year, after 5 years, they decided that they wouldn't be issuing any new permits because the waste lacked transparency. They couldn't be sure that the waste that they were receiving wasn't radioactive or chemically contaminated. So what I'm trying to avoid for the state of Connecticut and for the town of Milford and 168 other towns in Connecticut, we need to ban this waste. I don't see the state taking action, but You guys care about your town, so if you take action for your town, it would be the best bipartisan move you have ever made. Because you may not be able to know exactly what's in every truck that pulls up to your POTW, but if you're letting that facility know we're not going to accept this, and the truckers that are getting permitted to deliver there are being told you're not going to accept this, at least you've got a baseline level to protect yourself. Without a baseline level, you don't have anything.
Yeah. Mr. Chamberlain, thank you.
Just make an observation in that regard. Given the changes we've made recently at our water treatment facility, as far as permitting and rate structures and things like that, I'm far less concerned of a massive ingress of out-of-state liquid waste haulers, simply because we've made it not economically viable, that we've given some protections to our local haulers, and I think we've also gotten into a much more strident monitoring system as to what people are. And it is computerized, that you come in, you dump, you log in, your carrier is logged in, your originating source of the waste is logged in, and they monitor the system in progress. So if something untoward enters the system, hopefully, if people are doing what they're supposed to be doing, we're on top of it. So I would say that the chances that something that are a large amount of rogue waste ends up in our plant is probably pretty small.
Depending on DEEP's regulations, because depending on how much hazardous waste gets brought in and how much the 3 hazardous waste treatment facilities treat, if they apply for permits, they're going to have an awful lot of effluent to get rid of. We don't know whether DEEP is going to require them to truck all that effluent out of the state. Currently, they send this pre-treated effluent into the sewage systems of the towns that they exist in. But if they start accepting large amounts of this waste, they probably will not be able to only dump into those 3 towns. So what has happened in other states is state regulators have allowed a pre-treatment and then allowed permits for treated effluent to be sent on to publicly owned treatment works. And my goal in trying to pass these individual towns is to get all 12 towns that could possibly accept that effluent to pass this waste, and to get as many as possible to pass this waste, so that we can finally get state legislators to stand up to the oil and gas industry and ban bringing fracking waste into Connecticut. DEEP has not been supportive of a ban. Commissioner Klee has said he wants to be able to regulate this, and he could use California, Illinois, and Colorado. They have the best regulations in the country, and he can model Connecticut's regulations better than anybody else's. The problem is you can't track this waste from cradle to grave. But that is the line that DEEP constantly uses. We're going to track it cradle to grave. So, you could have effluent being delivered from a source, and several sources before that point, it was being used or it was being mingled with fracking waste. You won't know. So at least have a baseline, and if we can get as many towns as possible to pass these local ordinances, we have a chance of influencing state legislators, and finally, for the 4th time next year, hopefully we will be able to pass a bill to prevent this waste. Currently, DEEP has the authority to release regulations for review that started July 1st of this summer. Their deadline to release regulations for review is July 1st of next summer. Once they release their regulations, the Regulatory Review Committee has no authority to say, we completely reject your regulations, we want a ban on fracking waste. They can only send them back and do additional drafts or make some recommended changes. So the only way to stop this waste under current state law is for towns to pass a ban, and then ultimately, hopefully, 4th time is a charm for the state to pass a ban. Thank you very much.
Okay, so we're back to the procedural issue again. What does the council want to do?
I think we should table it until legal has a chance to review it and bring it back at the next.
We could bring it at the next town council meeting. I don't think, with that, we don't need a special town meeting. That's only required if the council rejects it. I think they've already had basically the public hearing, because that's what the signatures excuse me, to get to this point satisfied. So, we would just wait for it. Excuse me. What do you guys think about putting it on the next town council meeting? And
here's a remark. Could we pass it as is, subject to some amendments or tweaking from our town attorney?
That's what I said originally. So there's
what
two
you said.
options. You can either.
I think
I would do that as well.
You have a motion on the floor, though.
Okay.
If she withdraws it, then.
Well, no, we can make an amendment. We can amend it. I
Make a
made the
friendly
motion.
amendment.
We can amend it to, and let's come up with the proper verbiage here, John.
That's the subject to legal.
I was a little bit
Subject to legal.
I was a little bit confused because the initial motion by Mary Jane was to table it, and that's not consistent.
No,
with
I made the motion.
No, that wasn't a motion.
It
It was a suggestion.
Okay,
sorry.
And it wasn't seconded, by the way.
Right, no, it was just a suggestion.
All right, so let's work through the procedural issue. We have a motion right now, discussion and possible action. We can entertain a friendly amendment to that motion that would make it subject to legal review and recommendation.
So moved.
Okay. Is there a second for that friendly amendment? All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. So now the entire motion with the friendly amendment is on to, well, actually, it was just discussion and action. It should be to approve the citizen petition subject to legal review and recommendation.
Correct.
Okay?
Sounds good.
Do you want to set a deadline of the next town council meeting for the legal review?
I mean, we'll put it on for the next town council
It needs to be
meeting.
within that 60-day period.
Yeah, we know that. We've got till the end of August, but we'll put it on for the next town council. You'll fast track it and get a recommendation
So, I mean,
this
there's
week.
really, Mr. Mayor, there's really no need for further action, assuming that legal doesn't find anything deficient in it.
I think we do need a record of legal's recommendation.
Yeah.
Okay.
And if they want to weave it in a little more into our ordinances, they
Does
have
this go in zoning? Does it go,
Right.
Yeah, we've got to identify. That's right, the clerk's not going to know where to put this.
Right.
So we do have to work it into one of the chapters.
Absolutely.
So with that, so we'll deal with the recommendation, but I think we could approve the ordinance subject to the recommendation of legal, and then when we come back, you could adopt that recommendation at the next town council meeting. Fair enough?
Sounds good.
Okay. Is that going to be able to make its way into the minutes in a cohesive manner?
And then we vote on it. We have the vote on it.
Yeah. Okay. So the vote on that. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Abstain. The motion carries. Thank you very much. Thank you everybody for your work, your effort, for getting to this point. I'll give you guys a moment if you do want to.
You don't want to stay for the rest of the
Stay for the rest.
Come on.
You're not obligated.
It's a company.
In fact, let's take a 5-minute recess while we kind of regroup, organize, get some water. 5 minutes. All right, we're going to go back on.
That was only 4 minutes.
Back on the record. All right. Attorney Tower, you ready? We'll resume the normal numbering. Item 5, appointments to boards and commissions. I'll entertain a motion.
Motion to approve the appointment to the Sewer Commission, Alexander J. Karp, Democrat, as an alternate for the term 7/10/2017 to 11/30/2017.
Entertain a second. Okay. Any discussion? I'll give a little background. Mr. Karp is he was the president and chief executive officer of Choose Worcester, which in 24 months worked with 8 companies, created nearly 450 jobs, invested over $40 million in new capital investment in the city of Worcester. Worked for the state of Connecticut for many years, DECD, Office of Industry Cluster Initiatives and Business, Office of Strategic Competitiveness, Western Regional Office and Office of Business Recruitment. He worked for the town of Suffield for a number of years, and he was the owner of a startup company called CompuCorp. I think he's got great management skills, and will be a great addition to the Sewer Commission. So with that being said, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Motion to approve the appointment to the Farmland and Forest Preservation Committee, Elizabeth Goodwagon, Democrat, for the term 7/10/2017 to 11/30/2020.
Second. All in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Motion to approve the appointments to the Old Boardman Bridge Committee, Katie Francis, Robert Burkhart, Jeremy Ruman, Joe Quaranta, William Devlin, Walter Bear as an alternate, and Ron Sharisa as an alternate, all for the terms 7/10/2017 to 1/10/2018.
Second.
Any further discussion? We've got a good group of people here, so thank you, Katie and Walt, for your service. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Motion to approve the appointment to the Lake Winona Authority, the Marine Officers John Puglisi, Kevin Brooks, Chris Rosato, Sean Flynn, Matthew Donadio, Mitchell A. Heller, Aaron D. Blank, and Brian Flanagan.
Second.
If you want the addresses, they're all...
No, that's okay. This is the authority has requested that these people be appointed. It gives them authority to act in all the towns that Little Illinois touches, including New Milford, which is the reason why we have to actually appoint them. Same as we did last year. Any questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Motion to approve the appointments of the Lake Marine Assistants, Nicholas Puglisi, Charles Weeks, Stephen Lyons, Nicholas Sandone, and Connor Donadio.
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Item 6, reappointments.
Motion to approve the reappointments to Hidden Treasures Park Committee, Stephen J. Pavarotti, Democrats, 7/24/2017 to 1/24/2018.
And it just
And
keeps
also,
going.
yeah, Matthew E. Higgins, Brandon Merritt, Lisa Arison, Patricia A. Gregory, Lisa Lawson, and Christopher Bruzzi, all for the terms 7/24/2017 to 1/24/2018.
Okay, sure. Mr. Szymanski?
These guys stayed here all night. They wanted to give us like a 2-minute update.
Yeah, they're going to do an update. Yeah, Lisa's here
All
to
right, just want
kind
to
of
make sure
discuss.
before we fly through.
Sure. Sure, who?
Can we do that now?
Yeah, sure, come on up now.
So I have a handout for everyone, so I won't take up so much of your time. Just kind of giving you an idea of where we're at, if you wouldn't mind pushing those that way and that way. There's some pictures in there, there's GIS mapping. I don't know if you've had a chance to go to the Hidden Treasures Park. Good, everyone's gone? You happy? So we just kind of wanted to go over where we were at right now and kind of where we're heading. Hopefully you know Trish Gregory, and you know these other gentlemen on sudden, Chris Bruzzi and Brandon Merritt. Okay. So anyway, our first step is brush hogging, and we're working with inland wetlands right now to get a permit for that. We'll be doing a walkthrough with Jim Furlow next week. He's out of town right now. And then we have Joe Corrento of Advanced Organics, Advanced Construction, who's willing to do, and Brandon with J.C. Merritt at no charge, brush hogging in Hidden Treasures Park.
And thank you very much for that. You know,
Yeah,
make sure
that's
that there's
huge
recognition.
savings for
It
the
is.
town.
That's great. Thank
It's
you,
incredible.
Brandon. Make sure to thank Joe as well.
Yeah, Joe's doing a big job up there.
It's great.
I don't know if you guys have walked through there, but it's a big donation.
Nice.
So
It's fantastic.
He just offered.
Yeah.
Well, I guess I met with you.
Yeah. Great.
The next thing we're looking at is the structures that are inside the park. Kathy Castagnetto was successful in obtaining $10,000 from First Light as a grant to look at the safety of the building that's there. I don't know if you've seen, but the roof is caved in on it, and there's also a water tower. We want to make sure that, well, we want to look at either tearing them down or doing something to save them and repurpose them. So some of the ideas, for example, is for the building is to keep 3 of the walls up, rebuild the roof, and then turn it into a lean-to, for example. And then with the water tower, right now it's open on top, so if you throw a stone in there, you're going to hear it hit some type of fluid. So we need to look at draining and capping it. And then the next thing we want to do is have a survey of the property. We don't have an actual survey. What we have is a handwritten map that was done by Jim Furlow in 2008. And then we have the GIS information, which is attached in the little handout there. So we want to take a look at, we believe it's about 13 acres, although there was a newspaper article that indicated it was 16 acres. So we want to get in there and see what we're working with. And then we have Malone McBroom, who's doing a preliminary engineering report for the New Milford River Trail and for the Bike and Trails Committee that's going through there, looking at it as a possible route for the New Milford River Trail. So we will have topographic information from them. They're already doing that. The next thing we have to do is look at zoning. Kathy Castaneda believes it's not zoned to be a park, so we'll have to get a special permit of use change in there, and we can do that once we come up with a plan for how to handle parking.
What's it zoned for?
The town's owned the property.
Industrial right now.
Yeah, I mean, they've owned the property since 1977, and we just assumed it was zoned for it already.
Yeah.
So we have to take a look at that. And then some of the ideas we've had for the property going forward are, we certainly want to rebuild the portage area. Matt Higgins, who's not here this evening, he's in charge of like 9 different Boy Scout troops. He envisions going in there and putting in some new trails and perhaps adding, he would like to have the Boy Scouts be able to camp in there. So maybe some fire pits, footbridges where they're needed, and yeah, just make it more accessible with additional parking, maybe a turnaround area, a fishing dock. So we're looking at a lot of different options for there, and we're also looking at additional funding. There's an Iroquois gas grant that has a deadline of November 1st we're looking at for another $10,000.
Fantastic. It's great. Thank you guys so much.
So it's coming along. Is there any questions?
Exciting.
Yes.
For all these things, the park's obviously going to need maintenance. I know you paid Northern Landscaping to mow it right now.
Right.
So as part of the committee, can we get an idea of what the costs are for the long-term maintenance, or what the requirements are? Because we seem to create these parks.
Right.
And then we have no idea what it costs to maintain.
A lot of the park is going to be earth and trail. Parking is going to be grass parking. It's not going to. We were very mindful not to create, an eyesore and a financial burden to the town. We want to. If it's inclement weather, park's closed. If it's winter, gates up. Snowshoe, whatever, at your own risk. Signage, minimalist because it is flood, but basic mowing, and we wanted to create a Friends of the Park. Later donations, fundraisers, so it does not burden.
But going to your point, we have a best practices letter from Dirk Saban with regards to the invasive removal, and part of that in his recommendation is mowing every month for 3 years. And then after the 3 years, mowing it once every season, maybe twice a year. So right now the property doesn't fall under Parks and Recreation. It doesn't fall under Public Works, I don't think, except that they're responsible for inspecting the bridge, not the bridge, the dam. It falls under the town. I don't know. We're going to have to figure out who handles.
There's not going to be any macadam.
And I mean, the property has some challenges to it. It does flood out if you get 4 inches or more of rain, and it floods in the spring. So we have to work all of that out still.
That's great.
Fantastic.
It is beautiful. Yep.
Thank you guys for all the work. It's amazing how far I got to get down there. We'll take a look and see the progress so far. But with that being said, all in favor of reappointing the committee?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you guys. You got another 6 months. Thank you. Item 7.
All right, motion for discussion and possible action on the recommendation of the fee committee to accept the updated Town of New Milford schedule of fees.
There's a second? Okay. There was a fee committee that was set up, composed of Mr. Wargo, Mr. Bass, Mr. Bear. They were working with Mr. Bolero for a number of months. That resulted in 7A, which is the full schedule of fees being put together. And then you'll see in 7B, is 7A, Mary, the revised fees or the fees as they are today?
These are the revised.
Okay, so these are the revised fees. And then you'll see in 7B are the recommendations regarding the ordinance change, because some fees are set by ordinance and some are just set administratively. But I believe the committee reviewed all the administrative fees. Those were recommendations from the various departments and department heads. In some cases, the boards and commissions actually approved them. Planning approved their fees as well, and wetlands didn't change their fees. So I think it was just planning, right? Yeah, Mr. Chamberlain.
Could somebody give us, for those of us who aren't familiar with the exact fees being charged across agencies, is there anyone who has a basic synopsis of what changes are being made in the new document?
Sure, let me see. I've got my own schedule of fees, but I mean, let me go through what I can. So copies, these are general fees. We were charging 50 cents a page. State statute has raised it to $1 a page, so we're moving it so that it's in conformance with state statute. So going from 50 cents to $1, from 10 cents to 50 cents for each additional page. I've got a schedule of fees. It's a summary. I didn't know. I thought you guys had it as well.
No.
Let me just say, no. So there is a summary. Let me see. That's not included in your 7B summary. Building department hasn't changed, so I know there was concern about that. The only thing that changed was the copying fee. Instead of being 50 cents a page, it's $1 a page for the copy of certificate of occupancy. Blasting permits for the fire marshal, pursuant to general statute, are going from $30 to $60. But I think that's in our ordinance change. Health department is in the ordinance change. Parks and Rec sets their own fees, so that's really not a part of this. Public Works is in the ordinance summary change. Like I said, the town clerk, I already went through that. And the Planning Commission already adopted their changes under the ordinance, under the charter. They set their fees. So that's been adopted by them already. Wetlands has not changed their fees. Youth Agency charges what they charge for their program fees. Zoning fees are included in your summary. So most of the stuff is in the ordinance change summary, item 7B. And you could see from the health department to public works to zoning are the big ones. I think that's most of them, actually. Yep.
Question. So what was brought up by Mr. Gardner, just as an example, admit I don't pay much attention to things like that because I'm not going to build my own house. But how did we compare to towns around us?
From what I understand, buildings fees were modified a number of years ago, and they were modified to reflect change in the building code. In other words, a more stringent code was adopted. And so we did ask for his input regarding any recommendations regarding this while we're here today. And his recommendation was that our fees right now are consistent with the general area and shouldn't go up. So, yes, Mr. Wargo.
If you look at building permits prior to 2009 and back 876, the fees were way too high for the money it generated. But now what's happening, you don't have as many building permits. So to say the building permit should only pay for the staff, and that's fine. But when you don't have any building permits, it doesn't pay for the staff. So how would you make that up in the following year? So it's a mixed bag. When you have great building, a lot of building, you get a lot of fees. So you get more money in than the department generates as far as the cost.
Sure.
But you have no way of regulating that. You can't set your building fees based on how many building permits you have. So you're in a dilemma. So you have to set a fee schedule that meets the needs of supporting the department. But again, you don't want to overburden the builders and double it. So I think it's fair, but I understand the concern, and it's very difficult to moderate that.
Sure.
So the fee that was mentioned of $4,200 for a couple thousand square foot house, what about, is that the maximum?
I honestly don't know how that fee is calculated. I mean, maybe Mr. Szymanski could kind of fill us in.
That's an average fee for like a 2,500 square foot
Suppose
house.
I wanted to build a little cake, I'm the young family, as Chris was saying, when I moved
You want to do a 2,000 square foot house, you're probably over $3,000 in your permit. That's just building.
Permit
That's
before
not
I've done
wetlands,
anything.
that's not health, that's not zoning. So all of a sudden you start adding up all these other departments. I guess I have two questions. One, I'd like to see a comparison of what they currently are and what's proposed. I know we have that for the town meeting, but I'd like that for everything. And I'd also like to see where we are in relation to our competition. I mean, how can we vote on this if we don't know where we are in relation to Brookfield or Danbury or
Well, I would say
other
towns
areas?
that, you know, if I was going to move here, I don't know that I wouldn't necessarily want a city, which is Danbury, but I might look at Newtown.
Yeah,
that's
whatever
why I was
they are.
saying that.
I think we should have some comparison. to
Let's
see
ask
where
the
we are.
committee, because I know they spent a number of months putting this together. Mr. Bass,
That's true.
where are we with other towns?
I think we should table it, and maybe Greg come back at the next
Greg should be
meeting.
here.
No, I mean,
Well, did you
in your
consider
review,
this?
you know,
Like-
I mean, did you look at other towns? Did you,
I requested that we look at some. Frank,
I went over our fees. It was tough, because I didn't compare it to other towns, and I didn't have that information. But
Greg
Would
should
it
be able
cause
to
a
have
lot
it.
of distress if we were to,
I think we owe it to the people who are paying the permits in this
right,
town.
just to kind of look this
But
over.
again, the dilemma, the bottom
It's a
line, the
lot.
dilemma is you set the fees to cover the cost of the department, and the cost of the department is kind of steady, but the number of building permits goes up and down, and when it's down, you don't cover the cost, so how do you make that up?
well, I could say that a lot of these fees haven't been touched in a number of years, and the department heads that recommended them did look at other towns to try to get consistency. Mike, you're here at least, you know, on another matter, but, you know, regarding the health department fees, you know, is there anything that you could walk us through regarding, you know, so for instance, you know, the septic permits are going from $200 to $250.
Yeah, well, just very briefly, I mean, we did make a comparison. Actually, Brookfield prepared it, so we were the beneficiary of Brookfield's comparison. They updated some fees a year ago. Last time we updated our fees was 2007, I believe. So we looked at those and what Brookfield was doing, and you'll see the district departments of health are a lot higher because they rely a lot more heavily on their fee collection to support the operations. But we compared New Milford to Brookfield and to surrounding municipalities. That I think that what we're proposing is fair and consistent with what, you know, at least Brookfield has done.
Can we get a copy of that to look at it?
Sure.
Thanks.
So what do you want to do? Do we want to table this until the next meeting?
I would like
Do
to.
you want
table-
every, you know, it'd be easier for the department heads to explain exactly,
Yeah.
because they made these recommendations, and for the most part, they're not exorbitant increases, like zoning permits fees, you know, are going from, you know, $15 to $30.
What about the
That's
building?
50%.
I'm just
That's
curious
100%
because
increase.
that came up and it does seem like a lot of money. So what about the bill? Yeah, usually we have, you know, either a cross out with the new, can we get some sort
We
of?
do have that, the ordinances.
The ordinance. you
7B.
the other stuff we do.
So,
is all laid out. And the other stuff, like I said, we could get to the same thing, but for the most part, it was basically copying. Oh, we could get that as well. It's not that big a deal.
And can we just see what some other towns are in comparison, like zoning? Are we in the same ballpark as some other comparative towns, or not? I mean,
Do we
Mr.
want
Wargo.
to, you know, my comparison would be, what's the activity in these other towns? Do we have to be a little bit more competitive to drive some more, you know, attention here? I don't know what kind of attention we're getting right now.
so I don't see the building, so maybe it didn't go up.
No, building wasn't changed.
The building didn't change.
Right. Mr. Ward.
Yeah, I'm in favor of having the department heads come and defend their fee structure. If nothing else, it'll be on film. And anybody from the public who wants information
No,
as to
right.
why
exactly
a fee is a certain fee, they can refer to the tape and they can see that. I think that's a good idea. So there should be clear that we're not trying to pull a fast one, and it's what we think is a fair fee structure in relation to the cost of running a government. I mean,
Right.
because if we don't set the fees high enough, then the taxpayers have to subsidize the building department, and it really should be the people who are using the building department. So it's a mixed bag.
Yeah, that's fair.
But when you look at the current building department revenue, it's double what their costs are.
Well, I'd have to see that on paper.
I mean, that's another thing we should look at then,
Yeah.
is across the board, each department. But for instance, building brings in $350,000 to $400,000 in revenue and has 200 grand in salary.
So
So
it's a
add benefits, it's a profit generation
It's a
to the
profit
town.
center.
So maybe
And
we
is
should
that
look
what we
at
want?
lowering that then,
Well,
per your line of reasoning.
But there's more than just a building department's cost. There's a lot of related fees for when somebody comes in and builds a house.
Well, you still gotta pay a health fee, you still gotta
They
pay a
still-
wetlands fee, you still gotta pay a zoning fee. If you're on sewer, you gotta pay a sewer connection fee.
There's no town clerk fee.
I don't know.
But there is a town clerk
There is
fee,
when
and
there's a
then you
special
gotta
permit,
transfer-
then there's a filing fee on the special permit.
In any event, we'll kind of let the department heads come in. They'll justify. Like I said, a lot of
Let
these
them
fees
explain
haven't
it
been
to the
touched. You know, Mike had said 2007. Some go back even further than that. And it's just a matter of keeping up with inflation, so that we're not putting all this on the taxpayer. But I think we're looking for the sweet spot. So we'll let the department heads defend their fee increases, and we'll take it from there. Fair enough?
Yes.
All right.
Do we want any of the committee members to do that comparison to other towns? Or,
What do you say, committee members? You want to kind of do some research about other towns and
Well, I
what
think
they're
some
charging?
of these guys in each of these departments, I bet would have it.
Yeah, I mean, how
well,
do
if
they
they
come up with
don't,
their
but I mean,
ideas?
that's the committee's responsibility to.
Why don't you guys touch
follow
base
up
with
on
the
that.
I'll talk to
with the department heads too? You know, to say so that they're not walking in here having to get more info. Get a general sense for what the council's going to be looking for, and make sure when they come up here that they can answer those questions. All right.
So what does that do to number B?
We'll just table that also, and you know, I can
We're
set a
gonna
date
table this.
until, you know, you'd have to vote on the fees to set a date.
Right.
So we'll table it. Okay, item 8, health department.
Motion to discuss and possible action on renewal of the health services agreement with the town of Washington.
There's a second?
This is an
Okay,
update. We've
Mr.
done this
Crespin?
forever.
Yes.
Thank you. Just a brief overview. I mean, I know everybody's probably voted on it multiple times in the past.
Yeah, this is a 2-year agreement, so this is an update to that 2-year agreement. The agreement itself has not changed hardly at all, except for the cost, which I'm charged to look at yearly, and so I make sure that the cost what we charge Washington, that our costs keep up with what we charge Washington. So that's done every budget season. The one that was done for this year is dated January 26th, I believe. So that 3080 figure per month is up to date. That comes out to $36,960 a year.
Any questions, Mr. Szymanski?
There was a thing here about rabies response as per our January 14th, 2003 letter. I think I remember you telling me one time that for testing of rabies with the state, a lot of the funding was cut or something. So is that still applicable, or is that to change? Or?
Well, that had to do with the procedures in Washington. I mean, I brought that letter with me because I thought somebody might ask.
Just because I remember you telling me the testing changed like a couple of years ago. That was a big conversation.
Rabies response policy and memorandum of understanding, and it's 6 provisions, and it just has to do. There was a dispute between the animal control officer and the health department who was going to respond to animal cases and who was going to respond to human cases. And the first selectman at the time, Elaine Lucky, wanted to know who was going to do what. Right. That's what it came down to.
Thanks, Mike.
Are we having rabid human cases
Yeah.
lately?
Any further questions?
So somebody has to decide whether the subject is human or animal? I want that.
This has been a question.
Well, if it's a dog versus raccoon, it's clearly
It's an
an
animal.
animal. If there's a person involved, trying to protect their
Who makes
dog,
that
this letter works it out.
The government works it.
All right, very good. So, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you,
Thanks, Mike.
Mr. Crespin. Item 9, Youth Agency.
Motion to discuss and possible action on the authorization for Mayor David R. Gronbach to apply for and sign all necessary documents in connection with the Farm Viability Grant from the Connecticut Department of Agriculture. The grant request is in the amount of $7,000, and if secured, will be used for the purpose of developing a long-term plan for the sustainability of Sullivan Farm. The Youth Agency requests that this grant be placed in the farm revenue account number 1044190044118 and that the expenditure account for the farm number 1044190058908 be increased by $7,000 to accommodate this grant.
Second.
Okay, any discussion?
Yeah. Could somebody define sustainability? I mean, in the context that it's used here, sustainability could be, you know, ecologic, it could be financial. I mean, what are we talking about in terms of a sustainability study?
Just a long-term plan for the farm so that it doesn't, so that it becomes it's a resource for the town and for the townspeople for many years to come. Whereas right now, there's really no long-term plan for it. We're relying on basically Mark Mencken and his use of the youth agency to maintain it, but that's not really sustainable.
So essentially, this is it amounts to an economic study.
Well,
I think it's more than that. It's logistics. It's
right,
what can
because
be
it
done at
can't-
the farm.
Right. Well, there are certain things that can and can't be done to the property, and I would certainly hope that. I mean, I haven't seen this the whole long-term plan thing. I don't know. Are they going to do it, or are we going to hire somebody?
No,
I
we're going to hire
talked
somebody.
to Mark about it a while ago. Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's a good question, Scott, because sustainability means different things to different people. I mean, at one point we had some solar panel interest, and there, at another time it was hay on the fields that aren't growing things, no trees. I mean, I can think of all the things since I've been involved with it. It's maybe fruit trees, maybe not, maybe berry bushes. I think they're very good stewards of it. But there is a Friends of Sullivan Farm nonprofit that was created. It still exists for use, number one, to have people who might want to be involved. But as I've spoken to Mark several times, the reason for maintaining that, because it would take a lot to go through to get it, is to potentially help with grants to do things like this. But it doesn't seem that there's somebody that can take the time, I guess, on his side. And Kathy and I talked a little bit about it, because there is an opportunity if you have someone to search out, because no farms, no food, that's the big thing. And there is money and there are grants to be had.
Sure.
So we could do a lot to make that sustainability, real thing, if we can just find somebody who's willing to do the grant process, the search of the grants.
And that should be part of the study also, to figure out, what can.
Well, that's what I'm hoping that you might say to that.
I think so, yeah.
It's a good start to look at it, but truly, if you have the manpower to do it, there are, it's very big thing now.
Yeah.
So I would just hate to see things go by the wayside to what we could get.
I'm sure the Friends should be involved in the study as well. It's not going to operate in a vacuum, and so the input.
Well, I just that as long as it, I guess I just want to put it on record again. We do maintain it because, as I said, it's an expensive and laborious process to get the nonprofit status.
Sure.
And it was obvious that so many things could be done with the farm, but it takes money to have people oversee that.
Sure.
And our youth agency, they're great under Mark's stewardship, but that's not their prime reason for being. There's a lot of other wonderful programs that benefit more people, and I think that's a discussion that has come up several times. There are a lot of people who feel that way, but no one wants to see the farm anything but the beautiful place that it is.
Sure, yeah,
So
exactly.
yeah, I'm just saying, don't forget that Friends is there to help.
Good.
Get some grants they couldn't otherwise get.
So this is to get somebody to do a study on the viability.
Right.
Yeah.
So would they have any sort of public input, like during POCD, we'd have like an information session, they come out with some, what would you like to see here?
More soil, when we talked about it, and I see it's in here, as Mark said, it's to come in and actually test the soil in various spots on 100 acres and see,
It's a farm viability study.
That's
right. That's what I was trying.
And it is a venue that could be used for other things. We've had a couple weddings there over the years.
I've had that discussion with you on having an annual farm concert there that could raise money for this and make and help this completely self-sustain itself.
Right, and that's something that the Friends can help also. Okay. So that once I think it is a farm, and Mark had the right idea. Look at the base issues, find out the base importance or lack of importance in certain areas. Could be that some of the soil isn't worth anything, I don't know.
Right.
But I'm just bringing it up because we continue to maintain the nonprofit status for that purpose, and one of these days we're just gonna say, hey, renewing this isn't getting us anywhere, so maybe you can.
It may make a nice winery.
Maintain it, because I think with this, we're going to need the nonprofit to kind of take it to the next level. And so, but like you said, yes, this will give us a baseline, because a lot of people have a lot of ideas about the farm, but some things you simply can't do. So you need to know what the soil will support, what's going on where, so that you can focus on farming. You could look at the buildings and see what needs to be done with them to enhance them.
The educational component was really important.
The education,
to the Sullivan family,
absolutely.
And that it is very good at that. The way it's set up and where it is, and having the youth agency involved, it's a natural fit.
Sure.
So I would just hope that would continue.
Oh, yeah.
And there are, of course, other things to do.
Absolutely. And public comments, and we'll make it available. We'll have a forum for the public to participate and chime in, so that it gets all wrapped up in a final report as well. It's a good thing. And then we can start chart the path to make sure that Sullivan Farm will be here in 50 years and isn't looked at as a burden by anybody.
Exactly.
Yeah. Okay. Fair enough. So with that being said, all in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 10.
A motion for discussion and possible action on the authorization for Mayor David R. Gronbach to apply for and sign all necessary documents in connection with the Community Connectivity Grant Program. The grant request is in the amount of $400,000, and if secured, will be used for the purpose to construct sidewalks at the John Pettibone Community Center site and potentially beyond to connect with other sidewalks.
Okay, like I've said before, we've been meeting with the state for over a year now, because sidewalks and connectivity is a push that the state is emphasizing, and there's money available for it. They have studied Route 7, and so like the agenda item says, this is basically a grant to address the issues in front of Pettibone and beyond, because as I've said before, and as everybody knows, we've got these islands of sidewalks that, while I think the intentions are good, they don't satisfy the purpose that we're really trying to get to, which is one contiguous sidewalk eventually. Mm-hmm. Yes, Mr. Warden.
Two questions. One, I know your sidewalks are important to you, and I walked the downtown, going across the bridge, and firsthand know what's there. And my comment is that we need sidewalks on the other side of the bridge, by Dunkin' Donuts and by it's dangerous, because in the wintertime, you have to walk in the road.
Sure.
There's nowhere to walk except down the middle of the road. It's dangerous. So I would like to see that as a priority, is the from the bridge up
to the bus stops.
It is, yeah.
That's where it's
sure.
Where the bus stops
yeah.
are.
That is, to me, would be a priority. And what's sad was we have a beautiful sidewalk and then nothing for two more lots, and then a beautiful sidewalk. It doesn't seem to be some cohesiveness. And I know the problem is one side of the road is great for a sidewalk. But then you get down another 100 feet and it doesn't work, but the other side is beautiful for a sidewalk. And how do you get people from one side to the other safely?
Well,
so I would like to see a comprehensive plan.
We are putting together a comprehensive plan, just so you know, Frank, but we do have to, we do have this kind of already laid out, because it is town property. It's easier for us to focus on that. But we are working, and like I said, with the state, with a comprehensive plan that actually has a contiguous sidewalk that connects everybody from the bridge all the way down past the Walmart Plaza, down to Still River, actually.
Can I just, this kind of came to light because of the sidewalk discussion about Pettibone, is that there isn't anything in the ordinance that makes you have to put the sidewalk in.
Sure.
It's been talked about for years and years and years, and I guess people do it because they, like AutoZone did it. But in fact, is that true?
Zoning.
Zoning uses their authority to, for lack of, I guess, require sidewalks when applicants come before them to either do new construction or some kind of change to their property.
Is it a regulation that someone has to?
No.
So
that's not my
wouldn't that be something to think about if we want sidewalks to? I mean, there's a lot of property that isn't developed. So, like, say, AutoZone is an example. I've never would have thought somebody would have, but So they did put their sidewalk in. Of course, it's in the middle of the grass.
Frank, I think the time to do it was when Route 7 was expanded. You know, that would have been the time. We're kind of going about it piecemeal.
Right.
I honestly don't know what the particulars or the legal grounds are to require property owners to retroactively, you know, put in sidewalks.
Or at least new people.
Yeah, but they're trying to do what they can. Mr. Szymanski.
The zoning regulations themselves, the site plan standards and special permit standards, allow for them to consider pedestrian safety both on the site and how people get to the site. So the regulations can require the installation of sidewalks. Like
Cumberland Farms has sidewalks.
So of the $400,000 grant, how much would go towards the sidewalks for Pettibone and how much would go towards connectivity of other properties?
I think the idea is to use as much of it to go as far as possible to connect north and south, the Citgo station and beyond, into that vacant property and south. I don't know how far that's going to get them, but that's the kind of scope.
We haven't asked Public Works, like, what's a per square foot price for sidewalks, so we don't even have a clue, or?
I couldn't tell you off
Well,
the
you
top
don't know
of
that
my
you're
head.
going to get the $400,000.
Well,
Yeah.
I mean, when you're making the grant,
Or
how much
half.
sidewalks are we getting? Is it $8 a square foot, is it $10, you know? And is there any consideration given for West Street, South Main Street, and Grove Street, which currently has sidewalks that aren't connected, that you see a ton of people walk on?
From what I understand, because the state has already kind of reviewed this area, this is more of a priority for them and more likely to be granted the money.
But the road safety audit that we had did not include the Pettibone property, it was further south, wasn't it?
This area was in the scope as well.
Can we get a copy of that?
You can send me an email and we'll find out where it is.
So we don't know with this grant if it will do the Pettibone property or more than the Pettibone property?
I'm sure they have the numbers. Kathy prepared the grant, and I'm sure she's got how far they estimate to go.
So
and it
we
involves that entire Pettibone property, and hopefully beyond that as well.
But we don't have the application. It's completed, but we don't. The council's not given a copy of it?
We usually don't get a copy of it.
No.
Usually we do.
I don't
Yeah.
think so, no. I've never gotten a copy
We
before.
really don't. Yeah, and there we are under a time frame to get this
We could have
submitted.
submitted as early as May 27th, so we would have had time to ask Kathy some questions. It's a shame that we waited till the last minute.
We didn't wait for the last minute, but it takes time putting these applications together. And she's got a lot of other things on her plate. I think we're in an appropriate time frame. Mr. Warren.
One point that I forgot to make when I was talking about contiguous sidewalks. Goodwill is a good example. They required a sidewalk, well, I don't think required, but they put a sidewalk in. If you notice where it ends, in front of the telephone pole.
Yeah.
Sure. So that means that there really isn't any plan for the next space up. So that's the advantage of having a comprehensive plan. So they don't end up, I don't know how they continue the sidewalk. They have to go around it or move the telephone pole, but it seems to me that they could have moved the sidewalk either left or right, which.
Well, with that being said, all in favor?
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? Abstain? Motion carries. Thank you. Item 11.
Discussion and motion for discussion and possible action on the request to accept a donation of office cubicles and partitions valued at $1,000. These office cubicles and partitions are a donation from Bank Street Investments LLC.
Is there a second?
Second.
Any discussion? All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you.
Motion for discussion and possible action on the request to accept a donation of 2 lawyers' desks, a computer desk with bookcase, and a small credenza with bookcase valued at $3,000, and an executive chair and 3 area rugs valued at $1,000. The desk, credenza, chair, and rugs are a donation from the law office of Murray J. Kessler.
Is there a second?
Second, and point. I would hate for the chance to pass to not say something nice about Mr. Kessler, someone I knew for a very long time, a great lawyer, a great person, an average poker player, and I think that wherever Murray is, he would be happy that his stuff is being put to good use.
Yeah, I agree. A lot of history behind it. Mr. Wargo.
I don't imagine it would cost much, but if the town is going to utilize this, it would be worthwhile to purchase a plate.
Little
Put on the desk.
I agree.
For Murray Kessler, it's a way to preserve our history.
In memory of.
In memory of
Yeah.
Murray Kessler.
I agree.
Yeah, definitely.
Yep. That's fair enough. We could certainly
Make
do that.
Eileen
Plate
happy.
in
Yeah.
memory.
Make Eileen feel good.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I saw
very
it.
nice. Okay. Any further discussion?
Mm-hmm.
All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carries.
Hey.
Mr. Bass.
Hey, I know Carl had been here. He's been here since the beginning. We're gonna have that on the agenda, next agenda?
Yeah.
Okay.
We have one more item.
Yeah,
Right.
we do. Item 12A.
Motion for discussion and possible action to schedule a special town meeting for August 14th at 6:45 p.m. at the St. Paul Martin Room for the approval to sell town-owned properties at 28 East View Drive for $17,100 and 2 Elm Lane for $500. Offers for the sale of these properties were previously approved by Town Council at the April 24th, 2017 Town Council meeting.
Second.
What was the, I'm sorry, what was the date?
8/14, the next town council meeting. And we should do it at 6:45. And as it says, this was approved. There was a technical issue with whether or not notice was given to the clerk's office. So to make sure that we get everything done right, we're doing a new meeting. We'll post it and make sure the clerk gets that notice as well. Mr. Szymanski.
Weren't we trying to reschedule that meeting? No? Okay.
We're trying to move up, schedule an earlier meeting for another issue, which maybe with this.
I thought it was going to replace it, so we're going to have both meetings. Okay.
No, they were 8/14.
Just 8/14, right?
Yeah. So
That's our next meeting, right?
yeah.
Yes. Because there's no 2nd July.
Just so you know, there's been a request for a special meeting for an executive session matter from our bond counsel to bring to the town council, and it's time sensitive. So I'll touch base with you and see if we could schedule something for the end of July.
Yeah, sooner rather than later.
Yeah. It could be a special meeting, so it doesn't have to be on a Monday. I'm trying to get that taken care of. But we got to vote on this. So 8/14, 6:45. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Mr. Szymanski?
I have nothing else. Just one more quick thing. Now that we're in the new fiscal year, when do we get a copy of the revised line item budget to reflect the Board of Finance's $1.5 million in cuts?
Okay, I'll check with Finance. I think the Board of Finance already got that revised budget.
Okay, so if we could just email that to us. Cool,
Sure,
thanks.
send it out.
Appreciate it.
Move to adjourn. Absence, I
Second.
move we adjourn.
Yes, you're me and Walter tonight.
Yes.
Second that.
Okay, all in favor? Opposed? Motion carries. Thank you, everybody.
You got to say it with a little bit more of a boom in the voice.